Hey, there is currently construction going on in my office, so instead of setting up an awkward camera in my home, I thought now would be the perfect time to do a voiceover video. I wanted to talk about something that's been on my mind for quite a while, which is ideas around the Joker film. Yes, I'm 2 months late for anyone to still care about this, but if you clicked, hear me out. I wanted to discuss not so much the film itself. What's more interesting to me is the reaction to it and how it was portrayed and perceived by the media and the audience in general. Now that the time has passed and it's sort of come to a conclusion. So, personally, I was very happy when I saw the trailer had come out. The Joker is already a somewhat of a subculture meme, so this led to excitement for more memes. But I was mainly excited because it starred one of my favorite actors, Joaquin Phoenix, which, seriously, why is it not called Joaquin Phoenix? English language, please. I think he's a phenomenal actor and I knew he would fit this role just perfectly. A quick side note here is that in the previous film that featured the Joker in Suicide Squad, the performance was by Jared Leto, which was a questionable display. And according to The Hollywood Reporter, Leto was fuming over not being casted as the new Joker in this film. And I think it's so funny when people are upset over something they have no right to be upset about. Leto is a good actor and all, but when you're sending, allegedly, according to him, used condoms, anal beads, live rats to people on the set, I think he is trolling when he says this.
And the rule generally is never go full Joker. Never go full Joker.
But when the other stars in the film were asked about the gifts, they're clearly very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Did you get one?
Yes, I got so many weird things. I can't even begin to tell you the weird things I got.
I got a number of gifts from Jared.
Okay, what is
Which I don't like to talk about.
I guess that's just what happens when you're so epically immersed in the character of the Joker.
I'm the Joker, baby!
On another side note, I think the fact that Jared Leto, who previously won an Oscar, contrasting Joaquin, who never won one, and clearly deserves to, there's probably many reasons to why he hasn't won one, but I think part of the reason why is because Joaquin is weird.
So, this movie it's such a heartwarmer. I cried 3 times during the course of it.
I don't believe you've ever cried in your life.
I've been meaning to do a video on him, just him, because I find him very interesting. He's the kind of person that you don't really know where to place him, and he clearly enjoys that and plays on that. But those kind of people are hard to attribute awards to. And I think that's exactly the reason why Joaquin fits so perfectly this role. Anyway, the trailer came out, it all looked great, people were very excited. But the media's reaction slowly started to become weird, talking about how Joker is a dangerous film, bringing out the worst of the internet, talking about how killing Rampage would encourage copycat attacks, talking about its dangerous message or incel culture, male rage. The list went on. It went on so much that Todd Phillip, the creator of the film, even had to step in and say publicly, hey, I really think there's been a lot of think pieces written by people who proudly state they haven't even seen the movie, and they don't need to. I would just argue that you might want to watch the movie, you might want to watch it with an open mind. That's pretty fair, that you at least watch the film. The point here being, people were sure this movie somehow glorified incel violence or even white rage was mentioned. It went so far that even during a press interview with Joaquin Phoenix and The Telegraph, they asked Phoenix directly, are you concerned that the Joker might perversely end up inspiring exactly the kind of people it's about, with potentially tragic result? Joaquin walked out and left the interview. And it went even worse from here. The military, the US military, issued a warning to troops about the premiere even. It was almost as if media was bracing for impact that something bad was going to happen. But then the movie finally came out and, surprise, it's a movie about mental health. Unfortunately, this didn't change the narrative from media that it was still a dangerous film. But I think what the movie seemed to have mostly inspired was to have a bunch of kids dancing at a staircase. So was it all an overreaction? What have spawned many of these headlines and concerns came from what happened 7 years ago. In 2012, Aurora, Colorado, a shooting which took place at a movie theater. But it wasn't just any movie theater, it was during The Dark Knight Rises, the Batman film. And the terrorist had red dyed hair, and it was told that the shooter called himself Joker. So maybe the media's criticism over its film's release wasn't unfounded then, except this wasn't the truth. According to the district attorney, it never happened. Colorado officials have attempted to clarify for years that the terrorist never referred to himself as the Joker. Quote, the story has persisted because it fits the narrative so cleanly. Of course the crazy-haired colored guy who shot up the Batman premiere thought he was the Joker, of course. And yet, it has no connection to reality. The narrative about the Joker association with violence was false. The film's Dark Knight was targeted because it was the biggest movie premiering at the time. There was nothing more to it. But despite all the negative press that a recent Joker film received, the movie was still a huge success. It racked in $93.5 million on its opening, which is a record for any October debut film. It became the highest grossed R-rated film of all time. And I saw it. Maybe the hype ruined it a little bit for me, but it was a really great film. And I don't think the movie is without criticism, is my point. I'm not what Times Magazine would call a staunch defender of it. But people have been blaming movies, games, music, etc. as problems for other people's behavior for decades, instead of blaming, the people themselves. Hell, I've even been blamed as well. So why do we do this? Well, it's easy. Emotions run high. It's hard to think rationally. You want an easy solution to a complex issue. But I would argue it's time to be more responsible and look at the bigger picture. The reality is that hate isn't going to stop existing. I'm not going to pretend that I know how to stop hateful acts from happening, but there are two things about hate that I do know. Number one, it feeds off reactions. This may seem like an obscure example, but during World War II in Japan, there was a big concern by people that most of its beautiful and culturally valued structures would get destroyed by the fire bombings that went on. In Kyoto, where one of the most beautiful structures resides, which is the Golden Temple, was miraculously preserved throughout the war. But ironically, the temple was destroyed shortly after the war ended anyway, and it wasn't from any war or bombing. It was burned down by an arsonist who tried to commit suicide but was caught before and later diagnosed as schizophrenic. His motivation was to, quote, retaliate against society. Never heard that before, right? To me, it begs the question, if the concern for the temple's protection didn't exist, would it still have been burned down? Society saw a likely event as a potential tragedy, and it came true. Just not the way they had expected. That's why, to me, the concern for a shooting in a cinema might take place, which is, by the way, a valid opinion to have. I'm not saying you're wrong to be concerned about these things, but it could be potentially a dangerous thing to highlight just so heavily. I understand that it's not just one person's fault either for addressing what could potentially be an issue with the film, but since so many articles came out prior to its release without admittedly having even seen it, it kind of begs the question if it was all just not pure recklessness. My second point that I know about hate is that it wants to be recognized. Not every time, but a lot of times. The movie actually depicts this accurately. An outcast a lot of time want attention. They want to be heard, even if it's a dying breath. This is, I think, an inherent hate trait in people that wouldn't come from any inspirational source. Just don't give it to them. Arthur in the film was lucky to get on television as a platform to get his attention, by coincidence. By raising concern that someone might do something awful, you're basically filling a void for someone to step in and take the publicity. It's sending a dangerous message to people that we are concerned something bad will happen, we will platform that bad thing if it does happen. Arthur gets put on television just to be ridiculed. His performance on the show is what fully transforms the Joker. The irony being that the media helps create bad people while platforming them, all while simultaneously thinking they're better than them. Joaquin had every right to walk out of that question.